Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode and another week of Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me to break down Tuesday night's eight-game slate are Nick Martin and Tim Kalinowski. 8 games tonight, 5 games on Wednesday, I believe 8 or 10 on Thursday. So a pretty well poised schedule in the NHL this week. Should be good for the races, and there's just hockey to watch every night after a really weird schedule last week because of the Easter holiday. But it's good to be back. 8 games, right on the borderline of when we want to, do we want to force our hand and pick an underdog or not? But we're going to do it. All three of us have come up with an underdog with very little trouble, actually, and all three of them at good prices. Tim's going to save his for the end of the show because it's also his best bet. But Nick, who is your favorite dog?
Yeah, and I'll say I think this is probably my best bet too, but I really like the Ducks are out there as long as plus 195 at the time recording. I would play down to plus 180. They are in Calgary, and don't get me wrong, Anaheim has been absolutely horrific lately, but I completely think we've seen the worst of it, and this is such a bottom out price when you look at what Calgary's been. They bounced back and proved me wrong on Saturday. I do think a big part of that, the Kings really let down. They weren't great. The Kings shuffled every single line in that game, which I thought was a little odd, and it didn't work out. It seemed like they just kind of fell flat and weren't really there. I still think there's too many problems on the Flames roster right now for them to be this big of a favorite. And then the other thing I'm liking that I'm kind of really high on right now, I know it's completely the opposite take I had at the start of the year, but I really want to keep fading Wolf when he's in the goal. I think it's starting to show out that he's just way too small. It's too tough for him on these point shots. The odds are just working against him in terms of his size in the net. And when you can get him moving, it seems like he's getting exposed. So I'd like it less if it's Markstrom, which it who knows, maybe it will be, but it seems like they're pretty committed to giving Wolf his starts down the stretch here. So I like it there. And then if not, I still think if you're getting plus 190, plus 195, you just live with it. But to me, this is just way too long. I think we've seen the absolute worst of it from the Ducks. They have all their forwards back now. I would love to see Mintyukov play in this game. But still, to me, this just looks like a thing where we're talking about the Ducks at the absolute lowest point of their value. I don't think they're this far below Calgary anymore. I like it as kind of a get right spot in the midst of this tough road swing. And then the Flames, really, they had the surprising bounce back for the Kings. But again, I still think I want to keep fading them. Feels like they got a ton of credit for that win when I look at this price.
Yeah, this one's pretty disgusting. I'm on the Ducks too, but it's really just about the number. Like, it's hard to not bet this because of the price. Nick, you could have just summed it up with I don't think the distance is this much in terms of what the price is showing. I also like the note on Wolf because it shows that we can evolve our takes and opinions because you were very high on Wolf and the numbers he was putting up in the AHL. But I almost put more value in the fact that what you're seeing now is you're kind of doing a little bit of a turn. So I don't think that's a zigzag. I actually think that's a good thing. So I'll take it at your word there.
Yeah, I like the Ducks too. I had this one circled, but I had a feeling Nick was going to be on it because he's been pretty adamant about going against the Flames of late. Now, for good reason. And I do say, like, I know the numbers show that the Ducks were outplayed by the Canucks on Sunday night, but I thought that they actually played a pretty decent game. Like, that game wasn't going to be the Ducks going out there and tilting the ice towards Vancouver. It was very rarely going to turn out that way. So I liked the way they hung in there. They came back, made a game of it. As I think they had closed, what, 4-1 as an underdog in that one,
Yeah.
which was a gigantic price. I was so kind of checked out because it was the only game on, and it was a holiday. So like when I saw that price, I'm like, what is going on here? Because that seems a little wide considering Vancouver's good, but I don't think that they're that good. So yeah, I think the market's still a little low on the Ducks. So disgusting bet to start the show. Let's continue it with another one. Uh, I like Montreal, right around the same price as Anaheim. Florida is coming to the city of churches as a minus 225 favorite. I think it's a little high considering the game they're going to be playing on Tuesday night in Toronto. Bobrovsky will start that one. I thought Anthony Stolarz, he's been really good, but he did not look sharp in that Islanders game. So you wonder maybe if he's going to start going through a little bit of a wobble here. Nonetheless, he's definitely not. He doesn't have the ceiling of Bobrovsky. And no matter how this game goes with Toronto, I do think that it's going to be a weird spot for Florida, right? They win in Toronto, they put some pressure on, or they tie the Bruins atop the Atlantic Division. All of a sudden, you're going to end up with a great price, I think, because people kind of bake that narrative um, into this game where they say, oh, well, the Canadiens have nothing to play for, and the Panthers are right back in the race with the Bruins. And if they lose, I like the spot even more, because then it's, you're talking about a situation where they've kind of, squandered an opportunity, although they will be facing some pressure from the Leafs from behind. In that case, either way, I think it's a decent letdown spot. We haven't really liked what the Panthers have been putting out there regardless, over the last few weeks. Contrarily, considering, relative to what we expect out of them, Montreal has been punching up pretty well. They've certainly not given up. They had a couple big wins last week as big underdogs. I'm happy to still back them here in what is a pretty good schedule spot for Les Habitants. I know I'm on a bit of an island here, Nick, but what are your thoughts on Cats and Habs?
Yeah, I wouldn't say you're on an island. I don't disagree with it at all. I'm not betting Florida. I think Florida's a team that I just kind of want to watch where they trend right now and see how it goes. They played all those games with so many bodies out of the lineup. They're 7-6-1 in March, so pretty mid. Their expected goals was right around 14th. So they did drop off, but also they're a team that I think nobody's concerned about. They were playing without Barkov. They had some games without Forsling, most of that time without Ekblad. So the injuries are valid. I do also feel like, as much as people drum up these division races and stuff, they don't matter. So I feel like it was a bit of a dog days of the year thing for Florida. So we'll see. I don't mind it. I think it's a reasonable number for a Montreal team that kind of can hang around, but I'm just questioning how much the Panthers are going to bounce back and look like the team they once were in April here.
Yeah, I lean Habs here. I just wish the price was a little bit longer to go against one of the teams I think is the best in the league. I still think they're the best team in the East. I think that, like you said, Nick, it was kind of a dog days injury thing for them, and now that they're healthier, but it's not going to be Bobrovsky. I know that, it's been fine with their 1-2 punch. I would need a little bit longer price on Montreal, but I was certainly interested. I definitely don't want to be betting against Montreal too often here. We've said it ad nauseum that they're on the list of bottom feeders that still continues to punch up late in the season here. So I just didn't. I wanted a little longer on the Habs, but I'm fine passing.
Yeah, the other thing, and I agree with Mike that he's the kind of guy you're probably just going to see this number come down to earth anyways. Stolarz is first in the league in goals saved above expected per 60 among goalies with 20 or more starts. So he has been absolutely dialed. But also we've seen runs from guys like Alex Lyon and so on for small samples and goaltending that can be just a lot of noise. So
Yeah, no, I
not
think
saying
the
that's
difference between him and that is like he's getting spot starts, whereas like the Lion and like Lindgren looks like legit, but like those guys, they just go on a run and keep going. Whereas Stolarz has done such a good job as a backup. I just didn't really think he was too dialed in against the Islanders the other night. So I wonder if maybe we start to see him trend the other way. But yeah, tip of the cap to him and for the way he's played. The other thing about the Panthers too is like they're maniacs. They're just absolute maniacs. Like games can get completely blown off script too. So not a team I'm too thrilled about laying this kind of juice in this kind of environment. Like it's just in this kind of game, it's considering what could transpire on Monday night against the Leafs and then carrying it to this one. All right, so that's the Habs and Ducks as our favorite underdogs off the top. Like I said, Tim we'll go into his at the end of the show as well. Let's talk about what probably will be the game of the night, I think, in terms of what how it's being priced, the stakes for one of the sides, and I think that the conversation for this one is really interesting. That's Washington. They're right now, we're recording this right around 4 p.m. Eastern on Monday afternoon. They're plus 115 in Buffalo. Sabres minus 135. The total here 6.5. I think that it's pretty obvious why it feels a little surprising that this price is where it is. The Sabres are all but eliminated. Sure, you can. They're not mathematically out, but they're right there. Their max points is 89, and they'd have to basically run the table and hope that Philadelphia, Washington, Detroit, and the Islanders all play like a 450 points percentage. Meanwhile, the Capitals continue to just grind through and surprise people. I thought that they were really good against the Bruins on Saturday night in a shootout loss. I'm sure they're kicking themselves about that. I'm sure you're kicking yourself, Nick, about the double minor in overtime that they don't take advantage of. But all in all, I thought that was an effort where they showed all the things that they've been good at in the game, right? Like great goaltending from Lindgren, hung around with a good team, didn't wilt when they fell behind. So all this is to say, like, I think most people, without thinking from a betting perspective, would say Washington is the most likely winner of this game, even on the road in Buffalo. Yet the odds here are telling us that's not the case, and even on neutral ice, you'd say the Sabres would be the slightest of favorites. So what do you think about the Caps, where this game is, and anything actionable on it?
Yeah, I actually didn't catch Saturday's game. I had a birthday gathering I was at, and the restaurant didn't want to put on Caps Bruins here, so I actually hadn't seen the 4-minute call, but it seemed like a very classic Caps game. The one thing that I've noticed is Buffalo's gotten a lot of respect ahead of their 2 weekend games there. I couldn't believe how closely they were priced with the Leafs, and that take ended up being right. While I was wrong on Friday, I really couldn't see why they were that close to the Devils, and they did deserve to win that game. But it was also a pretty heinous game. Like the Devils they had 3 breakaways. I thought they could have had 4. There was like 4 simple stretch passes that were just bobbled or not completed. And I thought Buffalo's decor still looked like it was getting exposed a little bit. So I can see like a slight favorite on Buffalo, but I agree with you, Mike. I think it looks a little long. I get that the Caps process really hasn't been that good, but we're talking about Buffalo here. I'm
But
really
even
not
so, like
seeing,
people keep saying that, but like it is as good as it can be. Like
and it's less true than it was.
yeah,
Like if
like
I see
it's
that
not,
goal differential thing one more time, because they're like above water since the All-Star break, and
yeah.
half those bad games have been Kemper just getting demolished. So
Yeah,
they're
and they're like, what did you expect against the Bruins? Like, and they played well against the Bruins, but like you don't expect the Capitals aren't going to go out there and just be the last year's Devils and just like have the puck on their stick all night. So I think people continue to look at the Capitals and like grade them against the other 6 teams that are already, or 7 teams, whatever, there's 6 teams in the playoffs in the East. Like, yeah, they're worse than them, but that's not what we're talking about here. So
I thought we were at a point where we were ready to like call the Caps good. Like, and that's why
they're
I'm
hard to beat. That's what they are. Like they're not good. They're not bad. They're just really hard to beat when Lindgren's going.
so that's
yeah,
why I feel like so many casuals, if you just did a poll for this game, like I think a lot of people would be surprised to see Buffalo as a favorite, but just because of the sentiment has been, look at what Washington is doing. This must mean they're better than we think. And I don't know, we wrote in our notes here, feels like a trap. And I think that's so spot on because I even the way this has been going, this conversation, I'm wondering why we're not betting
I
Washington.
think I'm gonna bet the Caps. I don't understand. I don't get it. I think people. I don't know. I feel like let's switch these 2 teams. Like if the Sabres were the team in the Capital situation and the Capitals were the team in the Sabres situation, like this line would be blown to bits. Like it would be unbettable on Buffalo because like I think people are just wanting to believe still that this team is better than what they've shown, and we're 75 games in. I don't get it.
yeah, and the one thing with the Caps too, in terms of like their recent numbers, which I think is tanking in a little bit, where you're talking about like the metrics wise, the Sabres have been slightly better, but still bad. The Caps schedule's been pretty awful. They
Yeah,
played
it's hard.
Winnipeg, Edmonton, and then Seattle the next night on a back-to-back. Vancouver, in Calgary, the Leafs twice, Carolina, the Jets again. I thought the Wings played pretty well in that huge showdown last Tuesday, and they've looked actually pretty good at the late parts last week. And then yeah, Boston. So yeah, the Caps have been really just winning a ton of close games lately, and they're not necessarily owning more of the play, but they've also shown that they can hang around with anyone. Yeah, I agree. I feel like I can see it where they're coming from, and I just would make the Caps closer to like even money
Right.
than
Yeah.
we're
I think
looking at.
anything. I think if you're getting plus 110 or better on Washington, you should bet it. Honestly, I'll probably bet it.
And I'll say too, sorry, Leboff, is that the Buffalo is just so they're a hard handicap as well. But Washington, the way we've viewed Philly this year, right, is like such a feisty underdog. if the Caps were called the Philadelphia Flyers, wouldn't we be like, oh, we're getting the Flyers plus money here? Like,
Yeah.
why not? And so I also don't like the idea of, I think part of what's giving me cold feet is being on the team that has to win again. I think that's kind of a betting narrative that shouldn't totally sway you, but it's always part of my handicap is kind of the narrative. And I'll just finish off by saying I am on the under 6.5. There's, I think, 1 or 2 left on the board as we're recording this. Sabres, I've been noting it for a while now. They're a dead under team, and I can see the Capitals trying to play just a steady hand type game here, just kind of patty cake in the neutral zone for a little bit.
That's what they try to do every game. So I
Yep.
agree. The ones that break open is because things went off script. It's never because that's what the Caps want. Like,
Right.
yeah, and there has been more of those than normal, which I think helps get us to 6.5. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there as well.
Okay. Going from that one now to a game I think will open up. And we'll have the Penguins and Devils, the Pens plus 140, Devils at minus 166. The Devils were, Nick was talking about the Sabres getting credit for what they did over the weekend. The Devils, man alive. If you want to talk about their season in a nutshell, in a game that it technically, like you think they would have circled as a must win. We know that their playoff chances even going into that game on Friday against the Sabres were slim to none, but you can at least make every game more meaningful than the previous one if you go on a little bit of a winning streak here, and then they go ahead and blow a lead to Tage Thompson almost on his own, and here we go. Devils lose again. Not good, but I mean, it's not like the Penguins are any better. These two teams have the exact same points percentage going into this one. The goal differential is right about in line with one another. When you take away the shootout goals and such, it's like separate. They're separated by like 3 goals in terms of actual goal differential. And I think that is pretty much. I think it's fair. I think it's a fair assessment. I don't want to bet it though because I do think that the Penguins, of course, have made themselves worse over the last few weeks with the trades, etc., and are much more playing out the string type than the Devils, who are getting a little. They got a little bit of rejuvenation, and they still look decent at 5-5. Of late, Nick, you are considering laying with the Devils here, which I think is actually a pretty brave bet. I don't want anything to do with this game.
Yeah, I'm close. I feel like I could see them, like they have the top 6 that can cause so many problems for the Penguins, and I could see them, like it feels like one I almost want to just take my chances on the puck line at plus 150, see how it goes. I'm quite tempted. That Devils game, it had a lot of importance. I think you undersold, like, their chances of getting in the playoffs had they won that game in Buffalo were actually really reasonable. Like, especially the way that these like races are falling apart. And I was kicking myself for not trying to get something on Buffalo after one period because that was a really lucky lead for the Devils. As someone who had the Devils there, I was like, wow, how did they get out of that up 2-0? And then from there on was one of the ugliest games. Like, I didn't even think it was that much on what Buffalo was doing. It just felt like it was such a collapse from the Devils. They continue to be one of the hardest teams in the league to handicap, I think. It just feels like you absolutely can't count on anything from them. If anything, you just got to count on some weird absurd outcomes, like blowing 2-0 leads or all the comebacks after they go down, all the times they've won, versus teams like Dallas and Winnipeg when everyone was completely writing them off, and in Toronto, and then they blow a 2-0 lead to the Sabres. It just feels like even more than most teams in the NHL right now, they're just so volatile. It's very hard to predict what you're going to get out of them. But all that to say, I do kind of lean towards their offensive stars paying off in this spot versus the Pens, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still kicking myself from Friday. I texted you guys. I'm like, wait, why? What's the Devils handicap here over Buffalo? Like, and I only bet it because it was the only game on, and I'm just like, that's a good lesson in gambling, and that if that slate had been 5 games plus, I probably wouldn't have touched it, but I wanted something, and I'm just so sick of getting burned by New Jersey. Nick, you said they're a tough handicap. I look at this line, I'm like, okay, well, Devils have some rest advantage here with, they haven't played since that game, or they played Saturday or whatever it was. They haven't played since that game, right? Since that
Nope.
Buffalo game. So, and then Pittsburgh second half of back to back, and I was like, oh, will the line give us Devils cheap here? And I don't feel it's that way. It's April 1st, and I'm gonna just stop looking for edges on the New Jersey Devils and just tip the cap for the 2023-24 season. Say, yeah, I'll see you guys next year.
All right, so we'll see you on the Devils again next week, because I know there's a couple games, at least down the stretch, that
Oh
will
no.
be tempting. All right, let's talk about the Bruins and Predators before we get to best bets. Boston is a slight road favorite, -122. Preds +102. Total here is 6. Nashville's played some weird games to lose or to end that crazy streak. They've lost 2 in a row now. They've given up a ton of goals in both of those games. One was against the Coyotes, which was a good call by Tim to nail that one. And then they got dummied by the Colorado Avalanche over the weekend as well. I do think that this line is maybe giving Boston a little bit too much credit as a road favorite. I don't think it's enough to bet it, but Boston still, like, you look at their like rolling 5-on-5 expected goals rate, and it's not there. Like, it's just not there for this team, and it hasn't been there for a little bit. And
Pedestrian. It's
yeah,
pedestrian.
pedestrian is a good way to put it, I guess. And I know that this is a team that always can win on the margins, and that'll make them dangerous, especially if they're like an underdog in a playoff game and all that, and nobody's discounting them. But I think as a road favorite against a team that's really able to push the pace and generate a ton of offense, I think that this looks a little too rich for me. But not gonna make my card, at least at the current price, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Bruins, 25 games that have gone extra time here. Like, if they keep this rate in the playoffs, like, they're going to be playing games going into 1 a.m. Like, it's kind of I think it is indicative of the way they've been playing and the way they seem to want to win, with just goalie you to death, wait for Pasternak to get hot and hat trick and send out pasta emojis and all that. But I really want to bet Nashville here because I think you said it, Leboff. It's a little rich on the Bruins. I think it's a little too much credit. This road trip hasn't been great for them. And the thing that kind of just scares me off is just Nashville coming back east from 2 games out west. That's kind of what's scaring me off. And just the idea that the Bruins are totally fine winning a game 1-0, where Nashville's let up a ton of goals here. It's just, I don't know. I really want to get here on Nashville, but I'm happy. I was hoping you'd give me a better push than that.
Yeah, I also just view it as a pass. And my thing is just that I can see where people are coming from in terms of the way these teams are trending in terms of results and under the radar results. But I also just think that we've kind of seen the worst of it from Boston, seen the best of it from the Preds. Losing Carrier does suck too. I don't know. I think it just looks about fair to me.
Well, look, listen too. We bang our fists, but we want better slates on Mondays and Wednesdays, and now that shortens our Tuesday here, and now we have more passes because there's just not as many games. So just very careful what you wish for.
Yeah, but I looking at that Wednesday slate looks like a lot of fun, and like I said, the I think your Devils blacklisting the Devils might not even last 24 hours.
Oh no.
Okay. On to best bets. We'll start with Tim because this one was also his underdog, and he probably figured it out by now. But it's involves the Chicago Blackhawks and the New York Islanders, and the Hawks are +190, Isles -230, total 5.5. Islanders playing a massive game on Monday night in Philadelphia, which is basically a win and your season continues, lose and your season is all but over. Is that what is playing into this here, Tim?
A little bit, quite honestly. I don't care as much about the back-to-back, and a lot of that has to do with I like both Islanders goalies, and so they seem not totally back-to-back proof, but that doesn't have a lot into my handicap. It's really that I love the way that Chicago's been playing and their ability to punch up, and the Islanders have shown an uncanny ability to slip up when called upon. Even if the Islanders beat Philadelphia on Monday night, I will take my chances with a Chicago team that I think is playing a brand of hockey right now that is closer to the Islanders, closer to this price. It's just a team that I want to continue to back as a dog. And it just so happened to be a matchup with an Islanders team that, oh yeah, by the way, is a back-to-back. It is playing some meaningful games here with a lot of pressure. And it's just, yeah, again, we've been talking about it. Chicago's been a great bet here and for a long time. And the Islanders I'm happy to finally fade them, Leboff, after all the brainwashing.
You talked about them not being back-to-back proof, Tim. Do you want to know how un-back-to-back proof they are?
How on-back-to-back proof?
They have yet to win a game on the second night of a back-to-back this season. I believe it's 0-6-3 at this point. Maybe it's 0-7-3. They haven't done it yet. So look out.
Old
Yeah.
bones.
And they fail to clean up on teams that are playing back-to-backs as well.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. They're amazing. I agree with you. I think
That was the Hawks. We bet the Islanders that one game when they were catching the Hawks.
Oh yeah, that was the Hawks, and it was an unscheduled back-to-back because they got snowed in Buffalo,
Right.
and then they had to fly to Chicago, where the Islanders, who were mired in a 5-game slide, were waiting for them, and they still couldn't get it done, and that's what got Lane Lambert fired. Yeah, what a season from the Islanders! Just an absolute joy to be a part of that community.
And for the record, Nick, before you go with before everyone says I'm an idiot for calling them somewhat back-to-back proof, my defense is that I put a lot of stock into the goaltending, and I think that's a lot of what is you have to bake into back-to-backs. And you should trust their goalies in a back-to-back, but
I mean, you should trust them in a back-to-back against the Chicago Blackhawks twice.
Right.
On two different parts of the back-to-back the season. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you're crazy. Even if the Islanders, like you said, do win in Philadelphia on Monday night, I think you're crazy to think that this is a price you want to lay with the Islanders, even at home, and they just are not capable of playing to this number. I don't know. Maybe now against the Sharks and the Ducks, you can maybe see it, but not here, Nick.
Yeah, I agree. We've been banging the drum about the Hawks, and it's one of those things. It shouldn't be as hard or get that much pushback. Like, they've been a very profitable bet recently. They were good to us last week. We gave them out Tuesday and Thursday. They lost Thursday, but that's perfectly fine because they were like plus 155 at home versus the Flames. So it just, again, I think that the Hawks' reputation of just being the worst team in the NHL and being such a joke continues to hold value when they continue to play well. I think everyone thought they were there. I was mad I stayed off them on Saturday versus Philly. Such a long number, and they went in there and played another really strong game. And I thought they played okay versus the Sens, really. 2-0 final, probably undersold their game a little bit, I thought. And yeah, it just looks more and more like this is a team that isn't playing out the stretch. They want to, or that isn't quitting here. They want to keep getting better. They're being pushed. The D-core looks better and better. They've got like 4 defenders playing to above average results right now, which seems to continue to be swept under the rug. So for whatever reason, it feels like we always get a lot of pushback when we pump up the Hawks, but they've been a profitable bet. They've been good to us. I think plus 190 is way too long considering the flaws the Islanders have. As Mike knows, they can kind of get into games with anyone all year long. So it's a really uncompetitive number for a game that I think definitely has the avenues to end up being really close.
Yeah. And, if you're looking for a sign for another crazy trend for the Islanders, so they do play Monday night. So whether this trend holds true, but I think they've lost one game in a row, and they're on a 1-game losing streak as we record before the Philly game. They've lost one game in a row 4 times this season, so they've really are just driving me insane. Anyways, speaking of getting driven insane, let's talk about the Ottawa Senators next. The perennial 6-time defending dead rubber playing out the string Stanley Cup champions. They are doing it again. They're plus 120 against the Minnesota Wild. Some bigger numbers out there too. Minnesota minus 142 and total here 6, Nick. Another best bet on the Sens. I feel like, how many times have we said this year, like, just not doing it, and they got us. They're just gonna keep doing it to us. They're gonna keep bringing us back in. Like, we might bet on the Senators more.
They've
down
been
the stretch
solid.
here. Yeah,
I think lately though they have been pretty good to us. I'd say that we're at least break even.
I know. I'm saying I think we might end up back on the Senators more than any other team from this point forward.
And they've gotten more to the point where like they'll lose as an underdog, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. But like they baked in enough wins. We were big on them versus Buffalo. I know you guys had the Oil in that one game, or the Sens in that one game. Like I feel like they've mixed in enough of these wins where it's getting less embarrassing. And it's also just classic Sens. It's amazing how they follow this rhythm every single year where they get completely written off and then like go on a super hot stretch, winning 5 in a row down the stretch, and then everyone's like, "Oh, this is the team next year," and suck guys like me in, and then they just do nothing. But it does seem like at this point, I honestly think their roster is better than the Wild. I still fully believe that. If they get goaltending, I think that they're actually the better team, which is probably a little insane, but just one of those things. I think this game is a little closer in the number. I think the Sens will make it competitive. I think our take on the Wild probably remains the same. I like ahead of that Knights game, and I thought they played pretty good in that game. And we talked about how they're first this month in expected goals for, but a ton of that has been that they're playing really soft teams. I still think their offensive upside is pretty limited, and I'm not even sold they'll get kind of the level of goaltending they have had. They had a 914 save percentage last month, which partly came from how good their defensive play was, I think. But I feel like we've seen the best from it from the Wild. I think we could maybe kind of see the bottom come out here. I still like more of what the Sens have going on offensively. So yeah, you got to live with the Corpus tax. You could also, it feels like every time we say this, the Sens get 50 shots and lose. So you could also consider that angle, but I just think it's too long. And I feel like I could kind of see the bottom falling out on the Wild here. They're a team I want to sell on. I think they're going to hold some betting value based off how strong their metrics are. We know odds makers have their own metrics that they're using to create these lines, but they're obviously comparable to what's out there. And I do think that the Wild are going to be a little overrated down the stretch here and just kind of go out quietly. I feel like their season's over. They won some close games in March, but I don't really see it continuing here. I think they're kind of going to fall apart.
Yeah, this one for the Wild, it's they had I felt like the longest time of March, even though they were pretty much out of it, there was enough gymnastics they could do to tell themselves that they still had a chance. And with after the loss to Vegas, and props to me on our power play show for Vegas, I did not have the Wild pulling the goalie nonsense baked into that handicap, but it was nice to get rewarded there. The thing about the Wild is now it's like really they don't have a chance. Like it's now it's you can't really convince yourselves of really any avenue at this point. And Ottawa too, the way we've been backing this year, and we joke about getting burnt by them, but this feels though the opponent is like ripe for the picking for a Ottawa team that can certainly punch up and play to, I guess, play to their actual capabilities with a Wild team that's kind of a dream crusher. So yeah, I'm in on Ottawa here, and I guess one more time, boys.
I think also as an interesting aside, we love to use the phrase credit to us around here. And I do think that Saturday game was pretty interesting after what we said about the last poll, how I thought it was stupid because you don't get an extra point for winning in overtime. And I didn't think it added that much win probability. And said that, if Boldy misses that shot and the rebound goes wherever, they don't know what's going to happen. I don't think you own enough of the loose pucks 4-on-3. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Rebound went to a Knight and won the bet for Timmy. So that was especially satisfying, I thought, because I didn't really think that made sense the first time, as much as it was exciting. So it was a fun way to win a bet.
Yeah, our arms are getting sore from patting ourselves on the back here. Leboff,
Well, you get enough hate. You get enough hate whenever you do something wrong that sometimes you gotta, stick up for yourself.
I was once told a few years ago hosting podcasts that I sounded like I was being held up by a Russian mobster when I talked. I sounded scared, which I think is true. I am scared, and I'm scared to make this bet. I'm scared to make every bet. I like the Vancouver Canucks. They're my favorite bet on the board on Tuesday night against the Vegas Golden Knights. They're plus 110, Knights minus 130. Total 5.5. I think it's pretty simple. I think that this game is very, very close to a coin flip, and you're getting Vancouver at plus 110. I talked about the game against Anaheim, that how the Ducks could be kind of proud of the way they played. I thought Vancouver played perfectly fine. Of course, you want to see them kind of impose their will a little bit more against a team like Anaheim, but in the end, they get the 2 points. And they are turning into a poor man's version of the Boston Bruins a bit, where they are just playing tons of close games and getting through it through whether it's just a one break, a save, etc. So I still think that they're a good team and a team that I'd have no problem backing here as a slight road dog against the Knights team that yeah, they're starting to trend up. I think we've talked about how we saw them kind of stabilize themselves and they're getting bodies back in the lineup and they should be a dangerous team as we start the tournament. But in what I view as a coin flip, I think that I'll take the plus 110 on Vancouver. I do think this number could grow too. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm close on the Canucks here, and we've kind of been saying all week when they were playing good teams that they have been able to make every game into a coin flip. Kind of said the same thing ahead of the Stars game, and they do continue to look that way. So I can see that part of it. I'm just a little afraid of what the Knights are becoming. They're starting to look like they're just coming around as like the best team in the league again. Maybe not that far, but I feel like they could get to the point where we're saying that again. So I'm a little afraid of that. But I do agree that I think the Canucks are like they almost look like less of a luck box before like than earlier in the season, especially with how well they've defended. It's just a little scary. They're not getting too much from up and down the lineup offensively. Obviously a big night with Dakota Joshua coming back in and getting 2 goals. He's one of those under the radar needle movers. I could see him being one of these things where they go on a crazy run right now just because they've been playing like pretty good. And then it'll be the thing where everyone's saying he's like the one guy that's causing the whole team to win. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I definitely don't disagree with you here. I'm just a little afraid. I think the Knights are really coming around right now.
I think after this talk, I came in leading Vancouver, and I like them even more after this. And part of it is kind of Nick, what you mentioned, and we're starting to see Vegas look like the best team again or whatever. But this is the first game back from a lengthy road trip. I mean, they made their way all across the country, back up, back down, and it was a really important trip with a lot of really important games where they were missing pieces. And you come back home, I feel like it's kind of like almost a mission accomplished of like a breath of fresh air. And you can kind of sigh here and say, okay, like we definitely took care of business on that trip. And we obviously know about first game backs. And now you have Vancouver here that's obviously more than capable of winning a hockey game against Vegas with how good they've been. So I get here for sure on seeing it as a coin flip and getting plus money, liking Vancouver. I don't doubt how good Vegas is, but they really took care of business on this trip, and it looks like they're back to okay. No more concerns about Vegas, and when that kind of starts to get talked about, you might want to zag a bit. So yeah, that gets me to Vancouver there.
Yeah, Vancouver's definitely they've been playing really well. And the one caveat you always need to think about is they don't have Demko,
Yeah, exactly.
who like when the
Right.
playoffs start, you're going to be like, all right, this is the number one reason we might bet on this team. So I definitely do think the Canucks deserve some credit. I don't really want to say it because I think people need to stop talking about this Tocchet guy, but they really have played pretty damn well defensively of late, and so yeah, that obviously gives them a good avenue with any team. The other thing that's interesting, and I don't think anyone would ever tank. I don't think the Knights care. I would prefer to get out of that 3 hole right now. I think if I was the Knights, I don't again think that they're paying attention to that or actually worrying about it. But you probably don't prefer to play Edmonton in round one if you can avoid that. But who knows? You get into the wild card, you lose more than you prefer. Then you might be playing the Stars. It's not like there's really a great solution either way. But
No right way to do it.
No, the
yeah,
West.
there
The
isn't.
West
The
is
West
really
is just good, really
right
good.
because like now it's probably Winnipeg would be the team you want to play the most in round one. And 3 weeks ago, we were probably saying that we wouldn't have said that, even come close to saying that. So that's how quickly things change in the NHL. But that'll do it for us. Tim's best bet and underdog pick came in on the Chicago Blackhawks against the New York Islanders. I'll be in the building if the Islanders win on Monday night. If not, I'm not going to subject myself to that. My best bet on Vancouver Canucks. I like the Montreal Canadiens as my favorite underdog at home against the Florida Panthers. Nick, his best bet was the Ottawa Senators as a road underdog against the Minnesota Wild, and his favorite underdog was the Anaheim Ducks, one that we all agreed with. So if you're jumping on board with us, best of luck on Tuesday night. We'll be back for Wednesday's 5-game slate, which looks like a doozy. And as I said, be ready for Tim to renege on him putting the Devils on his betting blacklist. And until then, best of luck.